If you don't like paying taxes, then you're in the right spot. Today, we're going to talk about some simple ways that you can save money on your taxes, which means you can save more money that we're paying the government, and you can invest it to get rich faster. So have you ever wanted to be the life of the party? It's simple, really. Just talk about taxes. Seriously, people just love talking about taxes. Maybe not, but they should, because you can save a lot of money with understanding taxes. Now, before we dig into this, I really would love it if you guys could just subscribe to the channel. That would help me out, and you're gonna learn how to save money here. And so I'm essentially paying you to watch my video. You're welcome. When you understand how to use the tax code to your advantage, it can save you thousands, if not tens of thousands of dollars. Now, I say save because I acknowledge that paying taxes is not fun, but you have two options. Option one, you can complain about how taxation is theft and you can mope about. Or option two, you can understand that the tax code is written in such a way that it incentivizes certain industries and investments, and thus you can use it to your advantage. I hope you're smart enough to see, and I'm sure you are because you're still here, that option two is the better mindset to have about taxes. So once I learned this truth and I began to work more and more tax saving strategies into my business and investing life, I literally started saving tens of thousands of dollars in taxes in just a few years. Like, no joke, tens of thousands. So this is by no means an all-inclusive list, but here are a few great ways that you can begin to save money on taxes today. The first is investing pre-tax dollars in tax-advantaged accounts. The first way is to save taxes and to invest your pre-tax dollars, right? So like that could be a traditional 401k. For service members, this would most likely be your traditional thrift savings plan. When you invest pre-tax dollars into a 401k, you're deferring the taxes on that income until a later date. Now, that doesn't mean that you'll never pay taxes on it, but it means that you won't at the moment. Now, this is most beneficial if you believe that you'll be in a lower tax bracket at retirement age than you are now. So let's say you max out the $19,000, which at the time of this is the annual contribution limit for the thrift savings plan. That $19,000 means you avoided paying an additional $4,750 in ordinary earned income tax that year, assuming you were in a 25% tax bracket. Now, again, you'll pay that later, but if you're in a higher tax bracket now than you will be later, you'll still be saving this money, right? So whatever. Plus, this is especially true when you consider that with pre-tax dollars, you'll be earning compound interest for decades before you need to pay those initial taxes, right? So there's some benefits there. The other thing is, like, if you're on the cusp of a larger tax bracket, like instead of paying the larger taxes, just take that part and put it in a traditional fee fund or, you know, whatever, tax deferred, tax advantage, and then you're not, anyway. Mileage is number two. So do you own a vehicle? Do you use that vehicle for business? If you answered yes to both of these questions, you could probably save money on taxes through a mileage deduction. In 2020, the IRS mileage deduction is 57.5 cents per mile. For me, for example, let's just say 1 gallon of diesel costs $3, and I have a Jetta TDI, which we'll say gets 30 miles per gallon city. So my car has a 15-gallon fuel tank. So assuming that I fill up, that means that I'll be able to travel at least 450 miles for $45 worth of fuel. At $3 a gallon for 15 gallons, that's $45. That 15 gallons at 30 miles per gallon gives me 450 miles. Now, at 57.5 cents per mile, if I drove one full tank of fuel, 450 miles, I can write off $258.75 in mileage expenses. At first glance, this appears to be a no-brainer because I'm saving like 5 times what I would be paying. But you have to recognize that the mileage write-off assumes maintenance and other expenses are accounted for in those costs as well. Nonetheless, if you're driving your car for business and you're not tracking your mileage expenses, you're paying unnecessary taxes because you could be writing those off, deducting that. Now, my favorite way to keep tabs on this mileage expense is through MileIQ, which is an app I use. And this app automatically begins tracking when I'm in a car. And at the end of the drive, I can swipe right or swipe left to annotate whether it was a personal or business trip. Now, if you make the same drive frequently, it will automatically recognize those trips and you won't even recognize that you need to categorize them anymore. You can then download a report from MileIQ at any time, and you can just send it to your CPA or your tax professional and take advantage of this write-off. And I wrote off a bunch of money last year just by doing that. That was something my CPA taught me. So long story short, MileIQ makes mileage deductions simple to keep track of. And it's like $6 a month. I promise it'll save you more than that. I'll put a link down below if you guys want to sign into it, or you can just message me, whatever. I'll hook you up. Number 3 is education. Now, it might seem like a no-brainer that you can write off education expenses, but most people only thought of college when they saw the word education above. Now, if that was you and that was your thought, you're probably missing out. There are other tax deductions. Yes, you can still write off college tuition expenses, but you can also receive a tax deduction for other business-related education, like learning a new skill, attending a conference, paying for an online course, audiobooks, etc., etc. So make sure that you know about those. Number 4 is home office. Now, this is not necessarily a simple tax deduction, but it can be quite lucrative. Essentially, the cost of any workspace that you use regularly or exclusively for business can be deducted as a home office. Now, that's regardless of whether you own or rent the space. For example, I wrote this entire office off last year, and I'm renting in San Diego right now. Now, you should prepare a diagram. You should prepare a diagram of your workspace, your dimensions, and present it to the IRS, or to be able to, if they audit you. But otherwise, you're sort of in the honor system. So look, once you figure out what percentage of your home is used for office space, you can then deduct that percentage of your mortgage interest, your home depreciation, property taxes, and several other expenses too. For example, if your home office occupies 10% of your residence, then you could write off 10% of all those above expenses. You can either, like 10% of your internet bill, 10% of your utilities bill, whatever. Now, you can either calculate your home office deduction using a standard method or the simplified method. And although the standard method requires you to keep better records of your expenses and it requires more time, I absolutely recommend that you use this one. The simplified version has a cap on what you can write off, and it's peanuts compared to what you could probably write off with the standard method. Like, we're talking like $1,500 for the year, right? I wrote that off in like 2 months. So don't be lazy. Use the standard method, keep track of all your bills and whatnot, and your square footage and all that crap, and deduct your home office expenses. Number 5 is meals. A meal is a tax-deductible business expense when you are either entertaining a client or potential client or traveling for business. In these circumstances, you can deduct 50% of your meal's cost if you keep the receipts. Now, if you don't keep the receipts, you can deduct 50% of the standard meal allowance, provided that you have a record of the time and place and the business purpose. So receipts is easier. No, you cannot deduct food eaten alone at your desk. Sorry. Number 6 is travel. In order for your travel to qualify as a tax deduction, it must last longer than an ordinary workday, take place away from the general area of your home, and require you to get sleep or rest while there. You also need to have a specific business purpose planned, and you must actually engage in that business activity. These business activities can include, but are not limited to, finding new customers, meeting with clients, learning new skills, see the education section that I talked about earlier. It's whatever. So make sure you keep complete records for all these business travel expenses, because the IRS seems to enjoy scrutinizing these ones more than a lot of other ones, right? It might be vacation, I don't know. You could deduct the cost of transportation at your destination, to and from your destination. You can deduct lodging, you can deduct meals, and whatever for these business trips. You don't have to be the most frugal human being on these trips, but don't go overboard trying to write off a Ferrari as your rental car either, right? Like, no. The best part about travel deductions is that you can write off 100% of your expenses, except for meals, which are limited to 50%, as discussed above, right, or earlier. Now, number 7, I think, is where we're at right now. Solar, which is a fairly new write-off, and that may not stick around forever, right? So for the time being, you can deduct 26% of the purchase price of solar through the federal solar tax credit. I think that's going to go down to like 22, and then I think it's going to go to 18. I don't know, but if you own like 10 and whittle away. But if you own real estate, you're responsible for the utilities on your asset. Solar might be a great way to mitigate these expenses, especially with large tax deduction, right? Like, whatever. Now, number 8 is you can hire children, right? You can hire your own children, not other children, for $12,400 a year, or up to. So the amount that you pay your children is pre-tax, which means that it makes it even more powerful. I think the coolest part of the strategy is getting your kids involved in the business, teaching them how to handle income, and that you have them contribute a portion of this income to their 401k perhaps, and talk about providing value for your children's future. So there's a lot of ins and outs to the strategy, so definitely consult a professional to make sure that you're utilizing it correctly. But I love this idea, using pre-tax dollars to pay your children and then teaching them about money. I think that's huge. So I'm looking to begin implementing it next year. I'm talking to my CPA about it right now. It's awesome. Number 9, I don't know, I'm gonna run out of fingers here, and then we got toes. I'm kind of crazy. I don't know, Marines can't count that high. Donations. If you need another reason to donate to good causes, which you don't need another reason, there's great reasons, you may deduct these contributions if you itemize them. So you're gonna deduct the entire amount of your contribution up to a certain percentage of your gross adjusted income, right? Just another reason why you should remember to give back as your business grows, because, I mean, writing off is great. Now, granted, that shouldn't be the reason you give, but it's a whole nother thing. Ultimately, you should always be charitable anyway, but it's nice to be able to write it off. And then just get creative. So this is just the tip of the iceberg. There are many other tax deductions that you can claim when self-employed. For example, there are tax deductions for health insurance premiums, interest on business loans, startup costs, advertising, rent, business insurance, etc. If it's a business expense, you might be able to write it off. So make sure that you talk with your tax professional. And I do feel the need to throw out there that I am not a tax professional by any means. So these are just some of the tips and tricks that I have begun using over the last few years, and it is without a doubt worth meeting with a tax professional to discuss your specific scenario and your tax strategy and how to improve it. Now, the more money that you can save from spending on taxes, the more money that you can then reinvest into the business for growth. And that's what I recommend you do. Reinvest it and just grow that much faster. Also, subscribe and hit that like button so that YouTube thinks this video is worth the crap. Have a great day.